Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for all the English medium civil service aspirants. Welcome to another session of Economy Weekly Recap, wherein we will be taking up all the important economy-related articles which have appeared in different newspapers and analyze these articles. And in this video, these are the different topics that we'll be looking at. Now, before I start the discussion, very important announcement. If any of you are appearing for the upcoming civil services examination, and if you're afraid of, let's say, the CSAT preparation, tomorrow, that is on 12th of June at 2:30 p.m., we have arranged a mock test for you. This will be a CSAT comprehensive paper, and this is available free of a cost for all the aspirants. Register for this particular test and appear for the test, and by scoring well, please boost your confidence before the D-Day that is going to come now. Apart from this, if you are going to prepare for the next year civil service examination, a year after that, then if you want to prepare in English, we are going to launch Aram batch, and if you are aiming to prepare in the English language, then the Triumph batch has already launched. For further details, the number is given as well as the link is given in the description. Please check out. Now, let me start the discussion. First, a very important article which appeared in Business Standard, the beneficial ownership norms in focus as MNCs face a certain scrutiny. Now, what is this idea of the beneficial ownership? There's a technical term here. Please remember the technical term, significant beneficial ownership, SBO, significant beneficial ownership. The basic idea is, let's say you are an investor in a market. You want to invest in a market. Now, you want to invest in a particular share of a company, let's say XYZ. But one of the things that you need to look at before investing is, who is the owner of the company? Who are the people, either residents or non-residents, who can influence the decision making of the company, who have a control over the company? And that information you will come to know when you look at who is the significant beneficial owner, that is SBO. Now, the concept of significant beneficial ownership was introduced back in the year 2003 by FATF, Financial Action Task Force, which generally focuses on curbing the black money practices in the international market. So, the idea for the first time was introduced. Standards were introduced by FATF, and over a period of time, many countries around the world, in fact, have introduced the concept of SBO as well. For example, in European market, India for that matter, USA for that matter, have implemented the concept of SBO. Now, in case of India, Companies Act of 2013, CA 2013, Companies Act of 2013. Under the Companies Act of 2013, Section 90 was introduced, and this particular Section 90 talks about the disclosures regarding significant beneficial ownership. And the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, MCA, the nodal authority for implementation of all of this, will keep on reviewing, and through an authority, through the register of companies, if any of these companies are not abiding by the guidelines under SBO, they would be penalized. And very recently, the same thing has happened. Mr. Satya Nadella, along with many others, have been identified as the people who have not followed the SBO norms in India, and have been imposed with a penalty of more than 27 lakh rupees. What is the reason? And how do you identify who is a significant beneficial owner? What are the guidelines under that? What are the conditions under that? Let's go point by point. As per the India's provisions, I'll focus on India's provisions because the concept of SBO might change from one country to another country, from one law to another law. In case of India, according to the provisions in India, if you have a ownership, if you have a promoter's ownership, or let's say you have an indirect ownership of 25% or above, you'll be classified as a significant beneficial owner. Now, why do I say that indirect ownership? Let me give a very simple example. Imagine there is an individual A, B, C. Now, this individual has, let's say, 50% ownership in company D, and company D has certain ownership in, let's say, company XYZ. And if the company D owns, let's say hypothetically, if the company D owns 60%, if the company D owns 60% of, let's say, company XYZ, then this individual ABC, because he owns or she owns 50% in the company D, indirectly will have 30% ownership in the company XYZ. Now, some of you will say, but sir, this is not going to happen all the times. It may not happen directly like this. The investor, or let's say the owner ABC, might also open one more company. Let's call it as E. And the E company might also be owning certain percentage in XYZ. ABC might be having ownership in, let's say, right, company F. And the company F will have ownership in the company XYZ. So, I hope you understand indirect ownership, either cumulatively or let's say only one ownership like this. If it crosses 25%, then you are classified as a significant beneficial owner. And because you are a significant beneficial owner, because you are an SBO, you will have an influence over the policy making, decision making in the company XYZ here. And that's the reason, according to the provisions, according to Section 90 of the Companies Act, the company has to disclose all the owners who are classified as an SBO, who can be classified as an SBO. And not just that, if you are an SBO, you know that you are an SBO, you will also have to disclose that to the respective company, saying that I have an indirect ownership of so and so. I have ownership of such percentage indirectly in the company XYZ. So, these are the disclosure norms or the duties which are provided under Section 90 of Companies Act regarding the concept of significant beneficial ownership. And the argument in favor of SBO is very simple. The investors will come to know who is the SBO now. The companies will come to know who is an SBO. The information is provided to register of companies. There is a transparency in the system. That is the basic idea of a SBO. And because the Microsoft company, which has acquired LinkedIn company, this SBO has not been disclosed. The register of companies has imposed a heavy penalty on Mr. Satya Nadella and many others to the extent of more than 27 lakh rupees. So, this is the gist of the article provided here. Now, based on this, let's discuss an MCQ. Consider the following statements regarding significant beneficial ownership. FATF, Financial Action Task Force, is the first authority to introduce the standards for SBO. Statement 1 is correct. In India, it has been introduced under the Companies Act of 2013. Yes, and because the UPSC has the habit of asking the sections under the Companies Act, please remember it is the Section 90 under the Companies Act. And same applies to certain sections of RB Act, same applies to other sections of, let's say, Income Tax Act, etc. Because the UPSC has the tendency, it has the habit of picking up the sections which are there in the current affairs and asking them in the preliminary examination. So, both the statements are true. Right option for the question will be both the statements are correct, option C. Let me go to the next article. SEBI proposes raising BSDA threshold. Now, what is this idea for BSDA? Point number 1, BSDA basically stands for Basic Services Demat Account. I'll write it here. It stands for Basic Services Demat Account. Now, what is this idea of a Basic Services Demat Account? And I'll start using the short form now, BSDA. Under the BSDA, the logic is the investors who do not invest very frequently in the market, who do not invest a lot of money in the market, are allowed to use these kinds of basic service demat accounts and invest in the market. But what is the advantage? What is the idea? The idea is to promote financial inclusion by ensuring that the investment process, the cost associated with the investment is not very, very high. That is, please understand this. Whenever you want to invest in the stock market, you want to purchase a share, you want to purchase a bond, etc., you would require a demat account. And this demat account service is provided by a financial institution. And when they will provide this demat services to you, they will also impose certain charges and collect charges, which is essentially called as annual maintenance charges, AMC, annual maintenance charges. And if there is no demat account which is going to have a, let's say, very less amount of charges, and if there is a uniform charges applicable to all the types of demat accounts, there are certain retail investors, very small retail investors, small in terms of amount of money they are investing. They would not prefer to invest, and that's the reason back in the year 2012, SEBI introduced the concept of BSDA. And under this concept of BSDA, SEBI stated that if you have investments in the debt securities up to 2 lakh rupees and other instruments up to 2 lakh rupees, then this demat account will be classified as BSDA. And the AMCs, the charges which will be imposed, will be very, very less charges. In fact, the investment is up to 50,000 rupees or less than 50,000. Many of the times they do not even impose any kind of charges for maintaining this kind of a demat account. And the argument was, because the charges would be lower on the BSDA, this would attract retail investors and this would make it easier for them to invest. This would make it cheaper for them to invest in the market, and that would simply promote financial inclusion. Now, going a step forward, what SEBI has proposed very recently is that they want to increase this limit to 10 lakh rupees. They want to increase this limit to 10 lakh rupees. Again, some of you will ask me, or some of you will basically raise a doubt. Sir, when you say it will be increased to 10 lakh rupees only for the debt securities or 10 lakh overall? The proposal which has been put forward, regarding which the comments have been sought by the SEBI, they have given both of the ideas. Should we increase this 10 lakh rupees for only the debt securities, or should we increase 10 lakh rupees for the whole account itself? So the comments have been sought. You will have to wait and see finally what will be the proposal introduced by SEBI or implemented by SEBI. So argument is, why don't we increase this concept of a BSDA to 10 lakh rupees so that it will become more, let's say, accessible, it will become more affordable for people to invest more and more money, retail investors to invest more and money in the market. That is basically the argument given in the article provided here. But having said so, please understand, what UPSC can do is, they might make a comparison or they might ask you a question regarding comparison between BSDA, basic services demat accounts, and RSDA, regular services demat account. Although I have written regular services demat account, please understand, it can simply be called as just demat account. Although we have a differentiation into BSDA and RSDA, you can simply write it as regular demat account or regular services demat account or simply demat account. What is the basic idea? In case of BSDA, one individual can have only one BSDA. Please remember that. Why? The BSDA is connected to your PAN number and one individual is allowed to have only one BSDA. And BSDA, the charges are very, very low. The BSDA, in case of that, you can have a debt securities up to 2 lakh rupees, etc. And these features are not applicable to the regular services demat account. So this is the basic idea given in the article here. Please be very, very careful. Now, based on this, a MCQ has been given. Consider the following statements regarding basic services demat account. And before I go forward, please be very careful. Basic services demat account is different. The basic savings bank deposit account is also different. In fact, there is a discussion regarding basic savings bank account, that is basic savings bank deposit account. Very recently there is an article regarding this. We'll discuss it after some time. So in case of BSDA, this is available only for the FPS to invest in the debt market? No, this is available for retail investors in India. The amount of securities in this cannot be more than 1 lakh rupees. Wrong. It cannot be more than 2 lakh rupees in the debt and the other not more than 2 lakh rupees. Multiple BSDs can be opened. This is also wrong. Only one BSDA can be opened. So right option for the question will be option D. None of the above statements are correct. Now next article. CBIC proposes to amend 8-decade-old central excise regime. Let's go with certain facts now. Earlier, whatever authority we call today as a CBIC, CBIC basically stands for Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs. Earlier, the name of CBIC was in fact CBEC, Central Board of Excise and Customs. And when in 2017, Government of India introduced the concept of GST, Goods and Services Tax, after that in 2018, an amendment was introduced and the name of CBEC was changed to CBIC. Point number 1. Point number 2, the CBIC is responsible for implementation of one act called as Central Excise Act. And the Central Excise Act, CEA, Central Excise Act, which was introduced or passed in 1944, is being introduced by this authority or implemented by this authority. And what is the use of this act? The provisions under the act are mainly used to impose excise duties on fuel products. Are used to impose excise duties on the fuel products. Now point number 3. I'm pretty sure all of you know this by now. In case of fuel products, we do not have a GST rate. There is no GST rate on the fuel products. And this has created certain problem. This has made these oil companies, the companies which are involved in refining of the oil, it has made these companies tax inefficient. How so? Look at the point number 4. These oil companies, when they purchase, let's say, capital in the market, when they purchase, let's say, machinery in the market, they will have to pay GST. Correct? They will have to pay GST. And what is the important feature of a GST? The GST, a destination-based tax, has a concept called as input tax credit. In essence, whatever taxes you pay on the inputs will be credited back to you when you collect the taxes by selling the output. That is the idea of an input tax credit. And providing input tax credit, by doing that, government is ensuring there is no cascading effect in the market. But in case of oil companies, there is a problem. What is the problem? They have invested a certain amount of money and purchased capital and they have paid GST on it. And what is the output of these oil companies? Output is, let's say, petrol. When they sell petrol in the market, GST rate is not applicable on this. They are not able to collect a GST rate. They will impose the central excise, that is, central government will have its own tax and the state government will also have its own tax. So there is a problem here. This is a problem faced by the oil companies. And that's the reason for the last couple of years, with the introduction of GST, there has been a demand for harmonization in the taxation system. Oil companies are facing certain issues with the introduction of GST because when they invest on capital, they pay GST. And when they sell the products in the market, the government imposes excise, the state government imposes sales. That is a concern. And this has made the companies inefficient in terms of taxation. In order to address this, in order to make it easier to conduct business, in order to introduce harmony between the GST as well as excise duties, etc., in order to make all these taxation, bring them on the same level, etc., now the Central Board of Indirect Taxes has proposed a new bill, that is Central Excise Bill 2024. Apart from this, the article also says how many articles are there, right? How many, right? Let's say chapters are there, etc., etc. That is not relevant. That will not be asked in UPSC. Please do not worry. Even if you by heart this, memorize this. It's a bill. Certain changes are going to take place in the process of passage of the bill itself. So this has been proposed by CBIC. The public comments have been sought, and after that, right, there will be a discussion regarding the bill and what will happen whenever it appears in the current affairs in the future, we will take it up. Now, next article, banks urge BSBDA PMJDY customers to link mobile numbers. Earlier I told you there is also article regarding basic savings bank deposit account. Now what is this idea? Back in the year 2012, I repeat, back in the year 2012, there was an introduction of a concept called as Basic Savings Bank Deposit Account, BSBDA. And in 2014, Government of India launched an initiative by the name of Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana Accounts, PMJDY. And under this, as well as under this, many, let's say, customers or many of the people who did not have bank accounts earlier were allowed to open bank accounts. And the feature of a basic savings bank deposit account is very simple. This is a facility because before BSBDA was introduced, before this, back in the year 2005, there was one more type of account called as a no frills account. No frills account. And this concept of a no frills account was restructured into a concept called as basic savings bank deposit account. Under this, the customers are allowed to open a bank account with no minimum balance. Minimum balance mandatory is not there. That is, there is no mandate of maintaining a minimum balance. But having said so, they were supposed to have a maximum balance of 50,000 rupees. They would be allowed to get an ATM card or a debit card. Checkbooks were not issued for these particular customers. And the banks allowed certain minimum number of withdrawals using the bank branches. That is basically the concept of basic savings bank deposit account. Now, if you look at PMJDY, many of you will ask me in the comment section, so then what is the difference between PMJDY as well as the BSBDA? Please understand, the accounts which are opened under PMJDY are also a concept of a basic accounts only. There are also type of a basic savings bank account only. But the features which are associated with those bank accounts are slightly different. For example, if you opened, let's say, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana account, if you opened PMJDY account, government then used to provide insurance coverage to you. Certain insurance products were attached to that. And government also stated, if you have a PMJDY account, whatever amount that I need to transfer to you, let's say scholarship, or let's say Manrega wages, etc., etc., these kind of transfers would be done using PMJDY. That is PMJDY accounts, right? So these are the two types of accounts. Now, why it is there in the newspaper? What is there in the current affairs discussion? The accounts which are opened under PMJDY as well as the BSBDA, very old accounts, these are being referred to as legacy accounts. And the problem with these legacy accounts is, many of these accounts do not have updated mobile number. And the banks are saying that's a problem for us. That's a problem because I'm not able to find out whose mobile or whose account is this, what is the updated mobile number, we are not able to reach out, etc. And very recently, although it was announced last year with postponement, etc., etc., very recently, Government of India has mandated that Manrega wages have to be transferred using APS, Aadhaar enabled payment systems. So there are so many things that are happening. So banks are saying we need to update the mobile numbers, especially of these legacy accounts. And that is exactly what is discussed in the article here. The banks are saying they do not want to use the banking correspondent model or a bank sathi model. They themselves want to utilize their resources and get the mobile numbers of these account numbers, legacy account numbers updated. So this is the gist of the article provided here. Now, based on this, I have given an MCQ. Consider the following statements regarding the basic savings bank deposit account, BSBDA. This account does not have a minimum and maximum balance limit. Statement 1 is wrong. Why? Minimum limit is not there, but maximum allowed is 50k. It was introduced in 2012. Yes. The account holders are issued with a debit card and a checkbook facility. No, this is wrong. Debit card, ATM card is issued, checkbook facility is not provided. So second one is correct. Right option for this question will be option A. Option A. That is right. Only one of the statement is true. Option A is the right one. Let me go to the next article. Further delay in the GST rate rationalization likely. Likely, no guarantee. Why? Government of India, with implementation of GST, has passed the act and after that has implemented GST. Under the concept of GST, there is a constitutional authority, GST Council. Over a period of time, there has been a discussion regarding rate rationalization. What do you mean by rate rationalization? The number of tariffs which are there, the number of rates which are there are too many in India. Except 0, that is non-zero, the most important rates are 5%, 12, 18 and 28%. Now the concern of various experts has been that we do not require so many rates under the GST. It looks like an old wine in a new bottle. Compared to earlier structure, it looks like nothing has changed. So we need to reduce the number of tariffs or number of slabs under GST. And for this only, a committee has been established. The committee is headed by Mr. Suresh Kumar Khanna. And this committee is looking at how do we reduce the number of slabs, the rationalization under the GST. Because of, right, understand this, because of the outcomes of recent Lok Sabha elections, now there is a discussion. What would happen to the rate rationalization after the outcomes? Because the government would require the assistance of many of the states now, because in case of GST Council, please remember, the decision making requires at least 75% of the votes, at least 75% of present and voting. So you require at least 75%. And now there is a discussion with the outcomes of the Lok Sabha election. It might become very hard for the central government to rationalize the GST rates, because they require assistance, they require voting support from many of the states. So that is what is actually discussed in the article here. In fact, if I want to add one more point, there is also a discussion regarding whether the 12% or 18% slab rate. This we have discussed earlier also. Same thing is being discussed even in the article. Whether the 12% and 18%, the slabs of 12 and 18, will they be merged to make only one rate of 15%? Is it possible that government might simply postpone the implementation of the reforms? Or will it take a risk by going ahead, accepting the recommendations of the committee and trying to rationalize with the support of the states that they already have? So you'll have to wait and see whether because of the Lok Sabha election outcomes, will there be any change in the approach of government, that is specifically the finance ministry, because the finance minister is the chairperson of the GST Council regarding the rate rationalization. But if you basically think of it, is there a requirement of a rate rationalization in GST? Definitely yes. You need to rationalize GST structure. There is no doubt regarding that. Now, right, one more article. More road projects, higher toll revenues boost introduction of Infrastructure Investment Trust. Infrastructure Investment Trust, InvIT. In the earlier videos, we have discussed the concept of Infrastructure Investment Trust. Now, very recently, this article appeared in Hindu newspaper, which talks about renewed growth, or let's say more focus of many of these investors who are interested in this kind of a model of investment, that is Infrastructure Investment Trust. Why so? And what kind of investors are these? Those are the two areas that you need to focus. Point number one, there is a term which is mentioned in the article, which is required for civil services, patient capital. There is a term called as patient capital. Please remember this. There is a term mentioned here, patient capital. And the examples of patient capital are insurance funds, pension funds. Insurance and pension funds. Sir, what is the meaning of the term patient capital and why insurance and pension funds are referred to as patient capital. Patient capital generally means the capital which can be used and invested for a longer duration. For example, insurance companies, they are interested in investing in certain instruments or projects in the market wherein the returns can be earned in a longer duration, not in a very short duration. It can be earned in a longer duration as well. For example, very recently Government of India has issued government bonds or dated securities with maturity 50 years. With maturity 50 years. Why? That was a long-standing demand of these kinds of long-term investors in the market. Because they have lot of money to invest in the instruments or any of these kinds of projects. They generally prefer to invest for a longer duration rather than investing for a shorter duration. They know that if they invest in, let's say, a road infrastructure project, immediately you will not get the returns. That's a fact, by the way. Immediately you will not get the returns. Returns you will receive for a very, very longer duration or after a longer duration. So that is the reason this kind of an investment is referred to as patient capital. And in recent times, there is a lot of demand for these infrastructure investment trust projects by this kind of a patient capital. The reason behind this is twofold. One, the amount of revenue, that is the toll revenue which is being collected under the FASTag, the article says, has increased. The amount of FASTag tax or toll collection, not tax collection, toll collection, it has actually increased. According to the estimates provided in the article, for the financial year 24, the amount of FASTag collected is estimated at 65,000 crore rupees, and in couple of years this is expected to increase to more than 77,000 crores. 77,000 crores. And after a couple of years, it is also expected that it will hit 1 lakh crore rupees and will keep on increasing. That is one reason. Second reason is, very recently after the election results were announced, National Highways Authority of India, NHAI, has announced a hike in the toll by 5%, which essentially means the toll revenue collection would further increase through FASTag. So there is a revenue potential that they can see in these kinds of road infrastructure projects. And in recent times, including NHAI, by the way, many of these types of, let's say, developers as well as investors, they are interested in investing in the road infrastructure project using the investment model, which is infrastructure investment trust. In fact, in an earlier video, we had a discussion regarding InvIT as well, again in the context of National Highways Authority of India itself. Done? So this is the gist of the article. The last article for today's video, GST appeals process to be fully digitized. What are the important points here? First very important point, the GST network, GST network says we will fully digitize the GST appeals process. Now what is this GST appeals process? Earlier, Government of India has amended the acts and has proposed to introduce GST Appellate Tribunal. Not just proposal, it has been passed. Now they will be, in fact the Government of India has announced overall in India, there will be 31 GST Appellate Tribunals. And what is the use of the GST Appellate Tribunals? There is a lot of amount which is being disputed under the GST. That is, the GST authorities, the taxation authorities to be very precise here, they dispute a lot of amount to be paid by other participants in the market, such as companies, such as service sector companies, etc. There is a dispute which has arisen. In fact, the article itself says the number of appeals against the disputed tax has increased in India. The number which is given here is 14,227 tax appeals are pending. And in order to speed up the process, in order to make it easier to get this particular dispute resolved, etc., the GST network says, I am going to digitize the complete GST appeals process. Digitization essentially means whatever is the process, the orders, documentation, etc., everything will be made digital. Everything will be done digital now. And what is the use of this? Some of you might be thinking, sir, what is the benefit of all of this? First one, with digitization, now the whole process can be reduced. The time taken for the process can be reduced. This will promote ease of doing business. In addition to this, with digitization, the records can be maintained in a digital format. Other appellate authorities can review these or basically look at it, and based on that, the orders which are issued by the appellate authorities can be used by other appellate authorities. So this will basically make it easier to conduct business. The disputes resolution would be speeded up, and the whole process will be made much more friendlier. That is basically the reason why the GST network has announced to digitize the GST appeals process. Done? So these are the various important articles as well as the questions related to some of the articles. Before I wind up, another very important announcement. Many of the students generally keep on mailing me and commenting in the, let's say, videos, asking for the articles, that I am using in this particular video. If you want to download the PPT as well as the summation of these articles, all you need to do is simply scan this QR code. You will be directed to our Telegram channel, and in the Telegram channel, the PPT as well as the summation PDF will be uploaded. So that's it from my side. See you again next time. If you like this initiative, recommend these videos to your friends so that they can also compete with you. And more importantly, subscribe to our channel if you are yet to subscribe. Thank you. Have a great day.